First of all, thank you for coming on and congrats on your new job. And also, wellness check. How are Eagles fans doing a few weeks after the Super Bowl? It still seems very soon.
Yeah, it is. And thank you guys. Yeah, and happy to be on with you and hang out and talk here. I would say for the 2 weeks after the Super Bowl, it's all anyone talked about. It's how they lost that game, blowing a 10-point lead. The fumble by Jalen Hurts, the decisions by the coach, especially the one late in the game, but about 10 minutes ago, to not go for the 4th and 2, which gave the ball back to the Chiefs. The punt return happened after that. So, yeah, I think everyone's been replaying every little moment from that game for the past couple of weeks. I feel like now with the news cycle starting to move and free agency on the horizon here, and maybe a new contract for Jalen Hurts, I think people are ready to kind of mentally turn the page. But, it was 2 weeks of wallowing for sure.
Well, the good news is baseball season is right around the corner, and the Phillies, they lost in the World Series, so maybe a sore spot there as well, but still a very good team that, I'll say this, they're playing in a tough division in the NL East, but what do you expect from the Phillies this year?
Yeah, I think they're a better team than they were last year. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to win the World Series or go back to the World Series or anything like that. It's really hard. It's really hard, especially with the setup now. I mean, I think there's kind of two ways of looking at the MLB postseason when you kind of project and try to bet futures. Like, yeah, there's more spots, so there's more opportunity to make it in and do what the Phillies did last year and make a run. But there's also it's just harder to win round after round after round. So even if you have a good season like we saw last year, the Dodgers were incredible, the Braves were incredible, and they got knocked out the Mets right away. So there's kind of two ways to look at it. I think, though, just top to bottom, it is a better team than they had last year. I think they're going to win more games than they did last year. They won 87. They really snuck in the playoffs at the end. As far as postseason success, that's kind of hard to forecast. But I do think they're a better team than they were last year. I think they'll win a little bit over 90 games. If Bryce Harper was going to be available all season, I think they'd have a better chance to compete to win the division. I don't think they'll win the NL East because half a season without Bryce Harper is a lot. Potentially, we'll see when he comes back. But I do think it's about a 91 kind of win team.
Joe G, when you look at the Phillies last season, and one of the weaknesses they had, at least early on, was their bullpen, right? But then they addressed that. They get Gregory Soto. They get Craig Kimbrell. So that really shores up that part of the team. When you're looking at this lineup as a whole now, what is their biggest weakness?
Yeah, I still think defense is below average. You saw it in the World Series. Mm-hmm. I mean, those big games where that kind of stuff comes back to get you. I think it's a below average defense. So I do think the addition of Trey Turner at shortstop will help the offense without Bryce Harper, and then with him obviously when he comes back, and it makes a better defensive team. But they're substandard at the corners, first, third, left field, right field. I mean, it's like a softball team. Like they can't move around out there much and catch the ball. So I think that is a weakness. And I do think there's some questions until Harper gets back the middle of the order. Like, they'll be strong at the top. We'll see how they line it up. But, I mean, Turner and Schwarber is a good way to start any lineup. And then you throw Bryce Harper in there when he gets back. It's like, wow, 1, 2, 3, you get Real Muto 4. But after that, I mean, Nick Castellanos was pretty terrible last year. They're expecting him to bounce back. I do have some questions, the depth of the lineup as you go through 6, 7, 8, 9. Can they hit enough to kind of mask their weaknesses?
All right, so let's talk about the starting rotation, especially Zach Wheeler. What a season he had last year, finishing 12-7, but a 2.82 ERA, averaging more than a strikeout per inning. Like, he's not a huge strikeout guy, but still a great piece to have in your rotation. Do we expect similar things from this Philly staff this season?
Yeah, I do. Wheeler, now, there's a little bit of, I mean, not so far this spring, but just in general, there's always been worry about Zach Wheeler's health. And last year in the postseason, he kind of was wearing down. So that's one thing after a World Series run, especially kind of out of nowhere. I think teams like the Astros and Dodgers are used to going through October every year. The Phillies aren't. So could there be some residual effects for their starters, pitching an extra month last year? There could be. So that's something to keep an eye on. But Wheeler's really good. Nola is in a contract year, and he's really good. Ranger Suarez is solid. They signed Taijuan Walker to kind of be their number 4 starter. The one guy to keep an eye on from the Phillies' perspective, and also if you're into the American National League Rookie of the Year futures market, is Andrew Painter. 19 years old. He is a phenom. I mean, he might be the best pitching prospect the Phillies have had maybe ever, or certainly in my lifetime, in terms of like what he could be. I mean, there's comparisons to a young Justin Verlander. That's how high the organization is on Painter. He threw it in a couple innings a couple days ago in a spring training start. He had a sore elbow, and they've kind of shut him down here, and it's kind of been quiet about what's going on. I'm not sure if it's just a little tendonitis, and they're take a little break for a month, and then we'll see him sometime in maybe early summer, or if it's something serious. But if he could contribute this year, he could be kind of that X factor that kind of comes out of nowhere, kind of like Spencer Strider did last year for the Braves, maybe push them over the top. So Andrew Painter's a name, NL Rookie of the Year, and just the futures for the Phillies to keep an eye on.
Joji, what's your take on Rhys Hoskins? This could be his final year in a Phillies uniform, and he was great in the postseason at times, had some huge home runs, but he's either really hot or really cold.
Yeah, Jenks, I've never seen an above-average player, because, we see this with bad players where they go on a streak where they don't hit for a month or whatever, but I've never seen one that's, a pretty good regular player that is as hot and cold as him. It's remarkable. He will have a run. I'm sure it'll happen. Maybe it's April, maybe it's May, where he hits 8 home runs in 2 weeks. And it's like, man, Rhys Hoskins is leading the NL in home runs? Like, where'd that come from? And then he will not get a hit for 2 weeks. And he did it in the postseason, too. I mean, he started off terribly, and then he had a run through the Braves and Padres series where he kind of carried them. I mean, he hit like 5 home runs in the NLCS. And then you go to the World Series, he was 3 for 25, 10 strikeouts, and made a terrible error in Game 5. So it's like, that's what he is. The way I read it is, I think this is last year in Philadelphia. They've re-signed everyone. Like, they've just given out contracts left and right here. In fact, every position player is under contract beyond this year except him. I think it's pretty telling. And with all those DH types they have, I wouldn't be surprised if down the line they move one of those guys to first base. I don't know, maybe Bryce Harper eventually becomes a first baseman in his old age. Schwarber. I think they're kind of keeping that spot open, and I think he'll be on a different team next year.
All right, Joe, only a couple minutes left, but we've got to talk some bets because we know this is a betting show. So some of the bets on the table right now, the Phillies win total 89.5, 3-1 to win the NL East, 8-1 to win the National League, and 16-1 to win the World Series. Are any of those bets worth making?
Yeah, I like the win total. I think they'll go a little bit over. I just think the depth of the team is better. And you look at their record when they made the managerial switch last year from Girardi to Rob Thompson. They played like well over a 90-win team from, let's say, the 1st of June or whatever that date was on. I mean, they were really good. So I think this team will win over 90 games this season. I'm not saying 95, but I think you'll clear that bet. I probably would stay away from the other ones. If there's one other Phillies future I would consider is I would look at Trey Turner's number to win the NL MVP. If they have a big year and they're able to overcome not having Bryce Harper for the first half of the season, I think Turner will get a lot of credit for that. And with the rule changes, which I'm sure you guys have talked about in baseball, how it can impact things, I mean, I think Turner could really have a big year for 2 reasons. One, no shifting means extra infield singles for him, and he always has a bunch of those anyway with his speed. And then, his speed on the base paths, if stolen bases really do go up, I mean, it wouldn't be shocking to see Trey Turner have a 30-30 kind of season or a 30-40 kind of season and really have some big numbers. So I think Trey Turner at his number for MVP is also kind of interesting.